Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Lift. I'll be looking forward to the day where these aren't episodes, but we'll just be gathering together on Sundays. Hopefully that's sometime soon. I don't know. I'm praying for you. Hope you're praying for me. But let's dive right in with fun stuff today. All right. Be very careful with this one. I need you to find a coffee mug.
My dog chooses
I'm too lazy to move now.
Possibly could.
Sorry, Megan. Naz was like already jumping on it. So Angela,
gosh, we're dogs!
what just happened? Why was Jaden
My
screaming?
dogs.
So this one, you might have to take your phone or your laptop with you if it's possible. Ready?
Wait, why?
You need to go to your TV and turn on PBS. Show me PBS.
It's like a PBS.
Oh, wait,
Channel
it's
8.
bolting.
I don't think
I
Hulu has PBS.
Oh, PBSW.
Does it have Sesame
Is that-
Street? So show us what's on. Yeah, that's
Wait a
PBS.
minute, you're eating it up.
Show me what's on.
Oh, I got my sandwich.
We want to watch you eat
Sandwich.
it.
No, I'm good. Let's ask him
From beginning
questions
to
as he
end.
eats it. No, I'm good.
Watch, but don't listen.
You're not even going to
ASMR.
get a glass of milk to drink with your PB&J?
No. Ew.
That's like the only thing that I
if
would
you
drink
want
milk
me
with.
to, then sure. That's gross.
But I drink almond milk.
I drink people milk.
Hopefully
I don't drink
not.
milk. I'm drinking water.
Oh wait, no, not like that. Not like that.
Cow milk.
You drink cow's milk.
Sean.
Be quiet, Maz. Stop.
Show us.
Move it on the side or like you know, in something.
Everyone to stay up there, baby.
How should I carry? Piggyback or?
Just prove that you can pick them up.
Like a
Okay.
sack of potatoes.
Yeah, sack of potatoes.
How do you carry?
Because I was leaving.
Do we do piggyback or what? All right, piggyback. Get on my back.
Oh,
Let's go.
it's pretty good.
Get out. No, get out.
It's like, okay, that's enough touching. That's enough bonding. It's time to get out. All right, first off, we want to let you know that we are about making Jesus known. Even in these weird times, we can still make Jesus known with our words and with our actions. And we're actually talking about our words a lot today. So words are important. I encourage you to send some encouraging texts or do something for your friends to make sure that they know that you are all about making Jesus known. Because there's also at least one person in your life who needs to know Christ. They need the love, the peace, and the joy that only comes through Christ because they're living in a world of brokenness. And I would invite you at home, if you feel like you're just living in a world of brokenness, if just this isolation is getting to you, if you feel like there's something that's coming to the surface that you realize that, you know, I don't think I truly follow Jesus. I don't really know what it means to follow Jesus. Then I want you to know about Jesus. And so text me, email me, do whatever. I don't know. You guys use email? That seems kind of dumb. Don't do that if you don't have an email address. Don't get an email address just to mail me. Jump into some announcements before we get started. Zona Camp. Now, Zona Camp, the in-person camp at Biola, has been canceled, like I've been talking about for the last 2 weeks. Have you been paying attention? And so if you didn't know at home, I'm actually on the Zona Camp team that helps put the camp together, and I have lots of youth pastor friends who are dealing with the same stuff that we're dealing with right now. Like, how do we meet as youth groups and still do the things that we do? And so I interviewed him. If you've ever watched a certain show on YouTube that has hot wings on it, then you'll know what we're trying to spoof right here. But check out this interview that I did. It's kind of like a fun interview style with my friend Josh from Hillside Baptist Church. Check it out. All right. Well, welcome back to another first episode ever of Just Winging It. I called up my friend Josh. He's a youth pastor in Phoenix, just like us. So Josh, where are you? And just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Josh. I'm a minister here in Phoenix as well. I'm an associate pastor at Hillside Baptist. Father of four, married for quite a long time now. Been in the ministry for like 15 plus years, I think. And really like spicy food.
First bite of the wings, and then we'll jump into the first question. Are you ready?
All right.
Mine's very wet. Okay.
Cheers.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
All right. So first question, what is your testimony?
Well, I was not raised in a Christian home. I was actually raised by a single mom for quite a time. She had me when she was very, very young. So she was pregnant with me at 15. At 16 years old is when she became a mom, and I had a very bad experience with the church. And so growing up, my whole knowledge or understanding about Jesus or God was very slighted because I've only heard it in really negative terms. But my grandmother down in Tucson, when we lived there for a bit, she would take me to a Presbyterian church just across the road. And I know if I quoted these weird sentences, then I would get little fake gold nuggets and candy. And so I did that. And that was my first exposure to who God was and who Jesus was. Really, that was just all in the background though. Like I kind of had an idea, like church was just this like big ornate kind of deal. But in junior high, I mean, my life was going off the charts, getting constantly in trouble at school, failing, lots of problems with my parents, all sorts of stuff. And a lot of it had to do with my friends. Well, of that friend group, one of them was actually Christian and attending a church. And he had kept inviting me, and I just kept putting off because I didn't want to go. But eventually went and just found the people to be there just caring and loving and talked to me in ways that no one else had talked to me. Was there for about 6 months when the youth pastor, his name's Chad Moore, got up and gave his testimony and the gospel presentation, and he tied that into being two-faced, and that was the first moment I really realized like that's what I'm being, like I'm being two-faced, and it convicted me, and that's when I really understood this desire for repentance and understood that like only Jesus is the person that can rescue me for that. And so at 13 years of age was when I gave my life to Christ, understanding all that he had done for me, and then been walking forward ever since that day.
Yeah. Cool stuff. And so you came to faith in the 1990s, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around there.
Oh yeah.
That leads me to my second question. So let's grab our second wing.
Okay.
This one's kind of
Cheers.
chunky. You got like a big
This
one.
one's, I know they're beefy boys.
All right. Number 2 is the beef. That's where it is. All right. 3, 2,
All right,
1,
here
go.
we go.
All right, so second question. So you grew up in a time, a similar time that I grew up in youth group, where everything was extreme, and there was like a concert like every Friday. There was local shows, there were Christian bands like everywhere. And so now there's less concerts,
Mm-hmm.
there's less loud music. A lot of it is more like softer music. So what do you think happened? Why are things different now?
Ooh, that is a really good question. But you're right. Like I remember like early 90s or growing up that time, it was going to see MXPX, Five Iron Frenzy, lots of punk, lots of ska. I remember Phoenix being filled with like lots of like just kind of grungy concert venues where you would go and there'd be like 50 people there, and then like you were with the band and everyone just pouncing each other. I do remember moshing for Jesus, which I'm not sure, it's probably not a thing anymore, like to punch someone in the face, but I love Jesus. Probably doesn't happen that much.
Probably.
But I think, I don't know, like I see a culture shift and where like it became less about those small venues, and then it just started getting into these huge ones where it was just auditoriums and how big can it get. And I think when we got to the point of it just being these big concerts in huge venues, that we just kind of got away from all that and lost a lot of the community and intimacy that was there with the smaller concerts.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple. Were there some other bands that like you would just go to see anytime that they're in town, or maybe even some local bands that they would just like play all the time?
Oh gosh. Remember like any punk band would come through, and there's probably a bunch I shouldn't name, but there's definitely a bunch that I went to. I remember, one of the concerts that sticks out was seeing Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, wow.
Just off of ASU, and I was the whitest kid there, singing along to like all the lyrics, and I was like, none of this relates to me. Like, I don't like, none of this applies.
I grew up in an upper middle class family.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of youth ministry and the dumb things that we do in youth ministry, let's take a bite, and we will
I'm afraid of-
answer.
I think I'm becoming more afraid of the questions than the wings at this
Yeah.
point.
Okay, man, this is so drippy. They layered on this sauce.
This one, like, I don't know if wing sauce are different, but I feel like for this one, they said, you know what will make it up is just dump all the red chili flakes on it.
It's like,
That'll
we don't
make it
actually
hot.
have the sauce. Just give them the flakes.
Just all the flakes.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go. I feel like you have to make an aggressive face when you bite into a wing. What do you think the dumbest thing you've done as a student is in youth ministry? And what's the dumbest thing you've done as a youth pastor in youth ministry? And do they relate
man.
somehow?
Yeah.
Are you just not learning from your
thing.
mistakes?
Yeah, like if I just keep repeating it.
Like maybe a game that you played that you were like, wow, you definitely should have
We
played that.
shouldn't have played that game. Ooh, for legal purposes, I can't recite all
Yes,
of
it's
them.
true. There's many things. we can't
I would say probably the dumbest thing I did in like high school or something like that is that my youth pastor at the time and other people would have me do like tons of drama. And I remember just being like so gung ho. They'd be like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want to do. And they're like, okay, well, we have this idea where you're going to be, it was like a combination Mrs. Doubtfire and the church lady from SNL. And, but the joke got so out of hand. Like I became this person and the church loved it so much that they actually put me in the directory as this person.
No.
So this church is gone now, but in this church I was in their directory as a fictitious person, and so you're just kind of scrolling the pages and you just see like, who is this? I looked like I was just cross-dressing. I was like, why did we do this? Like, who approved of this
Oh man.
and put it in there? Like, my phone number is attached to this.
Yeah, there's got to be something in the church bylaws that should have presented this.
Yeah. Goodness. And then, man, dumbest thing. Okay, so one of the first things that always pop up is I remember we were on a mission trip in Seattle, and we had gone up to the top of Mount Rainier. Beautiful mountain, very high up, and it was actually closed when we got there, but we're like, you know what, we're American, we're just gonna park here, we're gonna go explore. Right. So we go, we explore, we see the top of Mount Rainier, we find all these cool things, we come back, and we're like, all right, let's head back down. And I could not find the keys. So I'm like searching. I was like, this is not my van. This is the Seattle church's van. So I call the pastor, I was like, dude, I locked my keys in the van on the top of Mount Rainier. He's like, well, I'm kind of on my anniversary dinner right now. I was like, oh, is there anybody else I could call? He's like, no. So God did provide, because there was a creepy knife lady that was at the top there, and creepy knife lady had a lot of knives. And
Was she wearing a
helped
trench
us
coat
out.
with the knives?
Close. She had a briefcase, and that was a little more scary.
Like, check this out.
She's like, I got the knife for that.
Nice.
But still this day, youth that were present, they're like, hey, remember when you locked the keys inside the van on top of one of the highest mountains?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, number 4. Here we go. Since we don't have recurring segments, since this is the first episode, I'll say that it'd be really cool to look at your Instagram right now and see if you can explain some stuff to us.
Oh,
So I'm gonna
goodness.
exit out of here. I pulled up a couple pictures that you need to
All right.
explain. So here's one.
I don't know if I need to explain that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, KJ looks the same.
I look a little different.
Yeah.
I look a
No
little
mustache.
less Jeremy. A little less Jeremy Campish
Yeah, that's
these
true.
days.
What I really like are the hashtags. And this is 352 weeks ago, so it kind of dates you
Okay.
a little bit. But
Right.
hashtag UJelly, hashtag America, hashtag Zona Camp, best friends, twinsies. It's pretty good. So what is going on in this picture?
Ooh, so just so everyone's aware, I get all my dental work done in Mexico. So
That's a real thing.
that's a real thing. Like, I go across the border, and that is me getting a root canal. So he's about to rip out
See
that
that
tooth.
there's like a hole there or something.
Yeah, he already drilled it, and so yeah, that's actually just across the border in Mexico
Oh, that's cool.
for my root canal.
All right, and then what happened here?
I feel like that I don't know if you're like me where that's happened so much that
Yeah, it's true.
I'm trying to remember the specific time.
Like, is this at church? Or, I mean, this is, yeah, it says Hillside Baptist Church Student Ministry. So this isn't like one of your kids throwing mashed potatoes at you or something.
No, I'm pretty sure that's, so at the end of the year, we always have a massive ice cream sundae for our youth ministry at the end of the school year. And it turned into a food fight. That's what happened. And then, of course, because I'm the mature one, I started said food fight.
Yes. Well, you look pretty mature here. So were you going through a phase right here? Why isn't this really stuck?
This is, I was casted to be in a murder mystery put on by Christian Challenge.
You definitely look like a murderer, for sure.
It's the scarf. I think it's the scarf that does
it. Gives you away.
And I was supposed to be a director in this play within a play.
All right, last one before we head out. Let's go ahead and go to that last wing.
Last wing?
Swing. And we can cheers that
one. Wait, that one.
You already bit into that one.
I already bit that one. All right, here we go. Fresh wing.
Go.
So many peppers. All right, here we go.
That one I like smelled beforehand. It's like got like the back of the throat feeling. You can like it burns in the back, not just in the front. Let's give some people some hope with this last question. How is your youth group adjusting to COVID-19? Any ideas that you guys are doing that you can give to other people? Any advice that you want to give to students or anybody in youth ministry right now?
So for our group, it's been going really well. If I were to have other youth pastors here, I'd be talking to them about like, don't try to copy what someone else is doing. Do what's working and best for your group. It's like for my initial thing was like, oh man, all these guys are putting out such awesome Instagram things and challenges. And so I was just killing myself trying to do the same thing, but that, wasn't taking. And so I was just really getting bummed out and be like, oh, my students suck. And, but what was happening is in our Zoom meetings, they were going really well. We had tons of interaction. They were texting one another. They were interacting with each other throughout the week, that they were staying connected. And so I had to back off and start realizing like, I'm just comparing myself to other ministries. I need to see how God is working in this and the way he's stirring the hearts of my students. And so once I did that, it then became much easier. So our group has been doing really good. We predominantly have been doing Zoom, and we've been playing interactive games in it. We do breakout groups. I'll teach. We have lots of interaction, and in that, we'll have challenges and stuff where they're either texting me or calling me or getting them to do something each day. So for our group, it's been working really well, and it's been neat to see, them bringing their friends into the equation as well. So we're meeting them and getting able to talk to them as well.
All right. Well, any last words or anything you want to say before we sign off for today?
I would say if you're going to get wings from Wingstop, like ask them how much red pepper per portion of chicken they use.
They probably just have like a bucket of red peppers and they just drop it in there and shake it a little bit and they give it to you.
Just get them a little wet. Oh.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today on the episode of Winging It, which we just
winged it
before, before this happened. But yeah. All right. Well, see you guys next time. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Caleb.
All right. I think it's time for a water break. Hydro. The only way to draw. I don't even really know what that means. Once again, this episode is also brought to you by the Up and Up brand hand sanitizer. I want to highlight all the different kinds of hand sanitizers that we have in our life. You hear that? It's good stuff. All right. Well, if you've been with us for a while, we've been in the book of James. We just finished chapter 1 and 2 this week, and then this coming week you're going to be reading chapter 3. So I wanted to give you a preview of some of the things that are in chapter 3 and highlight a very, very important thing, because we're talking about our tongue today. My tongue, it always looks kind of weird. It always kind of has the color of the last thing that I ate on it. It's a little weird. So show me a picture of your tongue. Like, who's got the best tongue? I don't know. That's kind of weird. Tongues are kind of weird if you think about it. And something that's going to mess with your brain, and I'm sorry in advance for saying this, but you realize that like your tongue is never at rest. Like it's always moving or it's always standing up. Like try to rest your tongue right now. It's still doing something. So anyway, we're going to jump into James chapter 3. So buckle up, take out your Bibles, and look at James chapter 3. So past couple weeks, I've actually had a sinus infection. I don't know if you've noticed, my voice has been like a little more nasally than normal. And like right here just kind of hurts all the time. Thankfully, I'm on some medication, but just because I have these sinus problems, like it's affecting the way that I move. Like everywhere that I walk, it kind of feels like I'm walking on a boat where I'm a little like unbalanced, because sinuses, even though they're small, they affect like your whole body. And so in the same way, the tongue affects the whole body. And that's what James is going to be talking about today in chapter 3. Small things can destroy us. And really the main point that James is going after, again, the whole book of James is about your faith and your character and developing a godly character inside of yourself. So James is saying that your character is dictated by your tongue. Your tongue tells people what your heart already says inside. Your words reflect your character. So it's important to speak well because that reflects your heart. So let's go ahead and read it together. James chapter 3, starting in verse 1. Not many should become teachers, my brothers, because you know that we will receive a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is mature, able also to control the whole body. Now, if we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we direct their whole bodies. And consider ships. Though very large and driven by fierce winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So too, though the tongue is a small part of the body, it boasts great things. Consider how a small fire sets ablaze a large forest. And the tongue is a fire. The tongue, a world of unrighteousness, is placed among our members. It stains the whole body, sets the course of life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Every kind of animal, bird, reptile, and fish is tamed and has been tamed by humankind, but no one can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With the tongue we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in God's likeness. Blessing and cursing come out of the same mouth. My brothers and sisters, these things should not be this way. Does a spring pour out sweet and bitter water from the same opening? Can a fig tree produce olives? My brothers and sisters, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a saltwater spring yield fresh water. So let's break down these 12 verses, starting in verse 1. Right off the bat in verse 1, James talks about how certain people shouldn't become leaders and teachers because those people are looked at with higher scrutiny. Really, with great power comes great responsibility, like my friend Spider-Man says. There is so much power in the things that you say. And if you are on display, people are going to be looking to you all the time. I mean, think about a tongue. A tongue could start a war. A tongue could start a marriage. A tongue could end a relationship, begin a relationship. A tongue can order pizza. And a tongue says things that people remember. Like I'm blown away all the time when you guys remember little things that I said like years ago. And all of a sudden it's like just back. The tongue is a powerful tool that we have. And in verse 2, we really get to the point because our tongues reflect our character. What's already inside manifests itself in our tongues. We let people know what's inside of us by the things that we say. James is just really honest in verse 2, and he says that we all stumble. Like nobody could actually tame the tongue. Nobody can speak perfectly. But he says that those who can do that are mature. Now, what is he saying? Now, we're all going to mess up. We're all going to stumble. But that doesn't mean that we can't still strive to be mature, strive to be perfect with our tongue. So James isn't really calling for perfection here, but he's calling us to seek perfection. I mean, think about a runner who runs a race. What if their goal is not the finish line? Then they're just running. We got to have the end goal in mind. Even if we feel like we're never going to get there, that has to be our goal. In the next couple verses, James shows some examples of how little things have big consequences. First, he talks about a horse. A bridle is just a bit thing that you put into the horse's mouth, and you can guide the horse wherever you go. I don't know if you've ever seen a horse in person, but they are huge. They're one of like the coolest creatures on the planet, but yet you can guide them by a little small thing. And in the same way, James talks about ships, like giant ships in big, massive storms are led by a little rudder. There's just a little rudder inside of a boat that steers it everywhere that it goes. So the little things in our life have big consequences and set the direction for our lives. Your tongue sets the direction for your life. Then later in verses 5 and 6, James talks about how a tongue can actually destroy a community. Now, James is talking about a body right here, but the body is a metaphor for the church body. You might have heard that before. It just takes one person saying something to somebody else, talking behind somebody's back, or even to their face, that could destroy a community. Think about a friend that you used to have, an ex-friend. What was it that caused them not to be your friend? It was probably either something that you said, something that they said. Relationships are won and lost on the words that we say. And in the same way, youth groups can be destroyed when people talk behind people's backs, when people say things that they shouldn't be saying, when they can't control their tongue, when they can't control their own selfishness. Youth groups can be destroyed too. Words matter, and words are damaging. But words can also be uplifting. In verse 8, James shows us that really no one can tame the tongue. And that's really where we have to start. We all have to admit that we all mess up, that we all cannot tame this thing. It's very dangerous. Not the wisest person, or even the person that uses it the most or uses it the least. Nobody can tame the tongue. So the best, most mature thing to do is just accept how dangerous the tongue actually is. So be self-aware of how you use your tongue. Be aware of how other people are using their tongue. Be quick to forgive others. Be quick to ask for forgiveness when you use your tongue in a way that you know that you shouldn't be using your tongue. Proverbs 17:28, I love this. It says basically, a dumb person is even considered wise if he holds his tongue. So people will think you're smart, like literally if you just don't say anything. If you choose when to speak very sparingly, like very small times, then people are just going to assume, oh, he's thinking, he's very thoughtful, he's a very wise person. So try it out next time. I think the most important thing for us to do is look at ourselves. Look at how you're using your tongue. In verse 9, James calls us out. He's saying, are you using the same tongue to bless God as you are to curse others? Do you sing worship songs and offensive songs on the same day? Do you cuss out your friend and then pray at church with the same tongue? We think that somehow when we enter church or when we open our Bible, all of a sudden our tongue is clean. But no, just like verse 8 said, we have to admit that the tongue is a fire. Like the tongue is evil. Nobody can control it. So what do? Well, the hope that we have is in Jesus, which is why we want to make Jesus known, because only Jesus can change your heart. Only Jesus can clean your tongue. God sees what you do. God hears what you say. And most importantly, God knows what's in your heart. You might fool us, but God knows what's in your heart. That's why in verses 11 through 12, James ends this section by showing some other illustrations from nature. He talks about good trees producing good fruit and bad trees producing bad fruit. So at the end of the day, all of these are a symptom of what's going on in your heart. That's the whole point. If you have a new, renewed heart, then you're going to have new, renewed speech. Do you guys know what symptoms are? Like a symptom is you're feeling tired. So a lot of people, they see that, oh, you're tired. You need to drink some coffee. You need to drink some caffeine. But really, they're just addressing the symptom. They're not addressing the root cause of the symptom. Maybe it's because you don't sleep at night. Maybe it's because you have a poor diet. Maybe it's because, on and on and on. The solution isn't just to get more caffeine to fight the sleepiness. The solution is to try to find the root problem. So that means that we all need to identify our root problem, which is our hearts. So think about the last thing that you said to somebody. What does it reveal about your heart? Even if most of the things that come out of your mouth are things like, I don't care, or whatever, like that's not neutral. That shows what's really in your heart. Like maybe you genuinely don't care about people. I would encourage you to allow Jesus to change your heart. Fill your mind with his words. Talk to him throughout the day. You'll be amazed that when you fill yourself up with Jesus, you'll find yourself speaking things that are more godly. So how do we follow Jesus with our tongue? Like that seems really weird. How do we follow Jesus with our tongue? Well, the number one purpose of why we exist is to make Jesus known. Jesus commanded us to make disciples of all nations. And we do that by speaking the truth of Jesus into words. And we can speak the same way that Jesus spoke. Like read the Gospels, read what Jesus did. He spoke up for the voiceless. He blessed those that cursed him. He called out hypocrisy. If you want to be like Jesus and be a good friend to someone, you need to speak the truth in love. So apologize if you're wrong. Open yourself up to people. Allow God to change you from the inside out. Let Jesus work on you. So remember how dangerous your tongue can be. You can use it for good, but you can use it very, very easily for evil. So when it comes to our youth group, I would encourage you to lift up others, to encourage life with your words. And maybe that's just starting small for you. Like start somewhere. Speak the truth and love to your parents. Speak the truth and love to your siblings, to your friends. Send an encouraging text to somebody right now. If you feel like you've wronged anybody, text them, tell them. Ask for forgiveness. Say like, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't understand why I said what I said. And hopefully they understand because they probably said things that they don't understand as well. Because the tongue is a weird, weird thing. We want to live in a strong community filled with unity. The world needs to see us as people who are different. And when we admit our faults, that shows something that's totally different than the world. Like a community who is open and honest with each other shows the world that Jesus is real and shows the world that Jesus can change their life from brokenness to a restored life with God. Only Jesus can change your heart because only Jesus is God. Only Jesus is 100% righteous. Only Jesus died for you on the cross. Only Jesus raised and gave you new life. Only Jesus paid the penalty for your sin and brokenness. So only Jesus can restore the life that should be inside of you. So I would encourage you to read the second half of James chapter 3 this week, and you're going to read the verses that I said this week as well, because your daily devotions, hopefully you're sticking up with those, your daily devotions are going to go through the book of James. So keep doing that. And the second half of chapter 3 is going to talk about the idea of wisdom. And wisdom is actually the solution to the problem that we talked about today. So it's not enough to just know what the right things are. We actually have to do the right things. All right, guys, well, thank you for joining me on this episode of Lift. I hope to see you in person soon. Hope you have a great week. Let me know how I can pray for you, how I can help you. Until then, keep it classy. I don't know, should I say something else? Until then, stay cool. Until then, keep playing Fortnite. Until then, hydro up. Until then, stay clean. Until then, hug your mom. Until then, smash that subscribe button. Until then, keep sleeping in until 1 p.m. Until then, I don't really know how to end it, so I'm just gonna stand here. You guys can like subscribe and click out this video that I did last time. Check that out. I don't really know what else, subscribe right there, hit that like button. I'm just gonna kind of stand here until the music's over. You guys still in the chat? Okay. All right, well, I don't have a watch on, but I'm pretty sure it's time to go. I'll see you next time.